Hello and welcome to yet another installment of Really Old News. This week's top stories include the discovery of a mysterious lost sun temple in Egypt, treasures from the Bronze Age burial of a young woman in Hungary, and evidence that the ancient Maya made rubber balls out of the ashes of their dead rulers. So without further ado, let's dig into the news. See what I did there? Anyways, today's first story, the discovery of a roughly 4,400-year-old sun temple at the site of Abu Ghurab, just 12 miles south of Cairo. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities has announced via Facebook that a joint Polish-Italian archaeological mission has just discovered traces of this hitherto unknown sun temple under another sun temple, that of the 5th dynasty pharaoh Nusret-Ini at Abu Ghurab. The media has dubbed this as one of the 4 lost sun temples, and that's because 6 pharaohs of the 5th dynasty are thought to have built sun temples for themselves, but only 2 belonging to the pharaohs Userkaf and Nusret-Ini had been found prior to this discovery. These so-called sun temples are a unique element of the funerary complexes built for the pharaohs of Egypt's 5th dynasty, who built their pyramids just south of Abu Ghurab at the site of Abu Sir. Egypt's head deity at the time was the sun god Ra, and the pharaohs of the 5th dynasty were especially devoted to him. A later legend even claims that the first pharaohs of the dynasty were actually the kids Ra had with a mortal woman. The newly discovered temple was at least 197 feet long and 66 feet wide, and it was mostly built out of mud bricks, one of the ancient Egyptians' favorite building materials. It was originally entered through a monumental entrance portico, which was partially built out of white limestone and featured 2 columns. Beyond that lay a courtyard containing reportedly huge quartz blocks, storage rooms, and rooms that may have been used for cultic purposes. 2 interesting foundation deposits containing a number of artifacts were also discovered. One contains pottery, mainly beer jars, but also some other bowls and red-rimmed containers. They were likely used in foundation rituals, perhaps for Nusret's temple instead of the one beneath it. You see, Nusret ritually demolished the older temple, possibly even before it was finished, to make way for his own temple. This sounds pretty shocking, but it was actually pretty common practice among the pharaohs. The other foundation deposit hints at who built the original Sun Temple, since it contains clay seal impressions bearing the names of various different 5th and 6th dynasty pharaohs, including one of the 5th dynasty's more mysterious members, Shepsiskare, who was one of Nusret's immediate predecessors. It's thought that he, or another short-lived predecessor of Nusret, a pharaoh named Neferefre, were responsible for building the newly discovered Sun Temple. An interesting thing about this story is that all the articles I've read on this discovery have left out the fact that this isn't actually a completely new discovery. The excavations undertaken by the Italian-Polish team have been going on since 2019, and the discovery of this sun temple has been reported on since at least November of 2021. In fact, German archaeologists also stumbled upon a small part of the temple all the way back in 1898, but they mistakenly identified it as part of Nusret's temple. But still, that doesn't take away from the fact that the discovery of this temple has now been properly announced, and it's a fascinating new addition to our understanding of ancient Egypt's Old Kingdom. Our next story, a Bronze Age burial unearthed in Hungary, has revealed a plethora of ancient treasures. Excavations conducted near the town of Mani in northern Hungary in preparation for the construction of the M100 motorway have led to the discovery of a small Bronze Age cemetery consisting of 8 burials. 7 of these burials only contained pottery, but one grave, containing the skeleton of a young woman no older than 20, was found to contain 38 different gold and bronze objects. Given the lavishness of her grave goods, it's thought that she was a rather high-status person. Rings were found on each of her fingers, and there were bangles on both of her wrists. A spiraling gold ring found near her skull was likely worn as a hair tie, and a pair of long bronze pins with broad terminals found at her shoulders likely functioned as components of her clothing. Based on all this, the archaeologists who found her are pretty confident that they can reconstruct how she dressed, which is pretty amazing given that no textiles have actually survived. She was also buried with a bronze dagger blade, because if you're buried with with that much jewelry, you'll call attention to muggers in the afterlife. Like the other occupants of the cemetery, she was also buried with several small pots. These pots show that the people buried there belonged to the Middle Bronze Age tumulus culture, which occupied Central Europe between 1600 and 1200 BC. Despite the name, the graves weren't found to be marked with tumuli or anything else for that matter, since over the millennia they've been flattened by all the farming that's gone on over there. In fact, the graves were only found 12 inches under the ground. In addition to the graves, traces of a Celtic Iron Age settlement and a medieval settlement dating to around the 9th and 10th centuries were also discovered. The archaeologists who made these discoveries are from the Szent István Károlyi Museum. I apologize for mispronouncing that, so I can only assume that the artifacts they've discovered will ultimately wind up there. And today's final story. Human ashes mixed with rubber have been found in a crypt within a pyramid in the Maya city of Tonina, suggesting that the Maya made rubber balls using the ashes of their dead rulers. Tonina is a truly remarkable classic Maya city. It's located in Chiapas in southern Mexico, and its towering central acropolis, built from platforms stacked on top of each other, is arguably one of the tallest structures in Mesoamerica, standing at 245 feet. It also hosts several different pyramid temples. Tonina also features ball courts and a plethora of monuments glorifying its great warrior kings, mainly dating to the 6th to 9th centuries. In 2020, during examination of one of the large temple pyramids, a labyrinthine crypt dating to the 7th and 8th centuries was discovered within it. Within the crypt were small niches which contained over 400 vessels, filled with a mixture of human ashes, charcoal, rubber, and roots. Now, microscopic analysis of this material has shown that the human ashes, which are thought to belong to the rulers of this city, were used in the vulcanization or hardening of the rubber. It's been theorized that they are the remains of the powerful warrior kings and queen who ruled Tonina between 722 and 776, going up against other great Maya cities like Palenque and Piedras Negras. The human ash-infused rubber would then have been used to create the heavy, large balls at the center of the ritual ball games played in Tonina's beautifully preserved ball courts. Now, the theory that human remains were put in these sorts of balls isn't exactly new. I even remember seeing an old Museum Secrets special trying to test out if whole skulls could be fit in them. So it's pretty interesting that we now have confirmation that they did do something like that in a way. Research team leader Juan Yadun proposes that this was a transformation that allowed these rulers to live on after their deaths, and that the Maya wanted the bodies of their rulers to be converted into a life force, something to stimulate their people. And if you really think about it, it's not all that odd. After all, people nowadays can turn their loved ones into diamond rings and stuff like that. Now, I hope you enjoyed watching this week's installment of Really Old News, and stay tuned for my Ancient Egypt iceberg video. The Mac with all the audio I recorded for it is currently being repaired, but it should still be out pretty soon, and I know it's been highly anticipated, so stay tuned.